Coming up today, North Korea marks a key anniversary, and that means South Korea and the United States are on guard against potential provocations. The South Korean government and the ruling party agreed to quickly provide relief to typhoon-stricken areas in the south of the country. Plus, we have all the highlights from the second US presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 10th of October. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon: the United States has deployed one of its nuclear-powered aircraft carriers to South Korea for a joint naval drill, which kicked off earlier today. A U.S. military official says the USS Ronald Reagan will take part in the six-day Invincible Spirit drill. The Allies plan to mobilize dozens of warships and submarines for the drill in a show of force against North Korea's nuclear and missile provocations. The U.S. is set to continue sending major strategic weapons to South Korea to heighten military pressure on Pyongyang. There are concerns North Korea could carry out a provocation today to mark a key anniversary. Pyongyang has a track record of lashing out on dates it deems important. There are a number of options open to the regime, but some experts believe the day will come and go with no unusual activity. Connie Kim with the details.
The South Korean military is on high alert for any provocations as North Korea marks the 71st anniversary of the founding of its Workers' Party on Monday. Sunday was the 10th anniversary of North Korea's first nuclear test, but no unusual activity was detected at the Punggye nuclear test site. Analysts say there are three types of provocations the North could forge ahead with: a nuclear test, a long-range ballistic missile test, or a missile launch from a mobile launch pad. A long-range missile launch is considered highly unlikely, as the North has stated it'll notify the relevant international authorities prior to any firing, which they have not done. South Korea has noted that another nuclear test is a possibility, following the regime's most recent test in early September.
North Korea is always ready to conduct a nuclear bomb test. The South Korean government is closely monitoring the situation and fully prepared to counter such provocations.
South Korea's military authorities also say there is a possibility North Korea could suddenly launch a medium-range Dodong or Musudan missile from a mobile launch pad. But there are also experts who believe the day will pass without a provocation. They note that restoration work following the worst flooding the North has seen in decades has yet to be completed. They also say Pyongyang will most likely wait to see what punishment the UN Security Council hands down for its September 9th nuclear test. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, the U.S. ambassador to the UN is on her third day of a visit to South Korea. She's due to hold talks with Seoul's Foreign and Unification Ministry chiefs on this Monday. For Samantha Power's message regarding Pyongyang's threats, Gonsoa reports.
Meeting with reporters Sunday, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, said Washington is willing to use all possible means to put pressure on North Korea. The comments came during her four-day trip to South Korea, a rare occasion for a serving American UN envoy. The visit itself is expected to send a strong message to the North Korean regime and its continuous provocations in the form of nuclear and missile tests.
While Security Council resolutions are one tool in our toolbox and a very important instrument of pressure, we are committed to using all the tools in our toolkit to address this serious threat, including the diplomatic pressure that we are mobilizing around the world to convince other nations to isolate the regime.
Power said she wanted to directly consult with Washington's allies and vowed that the U.S. is determined to stand by South Korea's side in addressing the serious threat. Before arriving in South Korea Saturday, she also made a trip to Japan. Earlier on Sunday, the ambassador visited the truce village of Panmunjom on the inter-Korean border, as well as the Hanawan Settlement Support Center for North Korean refugees. She also held talks with South Korea's Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-an. Hwang delivered a message to power from President Park Geun-hye asking for continuous efforts on the UN level to deal with the regime's threats. Power is expected to hold further meetings on Monday with high-ranking officials such as South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo before departing for the U.S. on Tuesday. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, a prominent US think tank has warned that North Korea could have an extremely formidable nuclear missile arsenal in less than 10 years from now. It says the rate of development should worry Washington, especially as some here in South Korea and also in Japan say they should develop their own nuclear deterrence. Kim Mok-yeon has more.
The RAND Corporation says North Korea may have enough material to develop between 13 to 21 nuclear weapons, and by as early as 2020 and as late as 2025, it could possess up to 100. It says Pyongyang is currently in the process of developing missiles with nuclear warheads that can reach the continental United States. The report also says that in the next 6 years, the regime will have numerous long-range, road-mobile, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles that are capable of invalidating Washington's regional military posture and war plans. The report also said that if South Korea perceives a major threat from the north, Seoul might launch preemptive attacks on the regime's nuclear and missile facilities. If that happens, the report says it could lead to counter-escalation or even make North Korea launch a preemptive strike first. With Pyongyang's nuclear development, some in Seoul and Tokyo are losing faith in Washington's nuclear umbrella and are calling for the development of their own independent nuclear arsenals. However, the think tank warned a decision by South Korea or Japan to develop nuclear weapons would eventually lead the other to follow suit and fundamentally change security dynamics in Northeast Asia and threaten the viability of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump faced off for the second time at a town hall debate that wrapped up around 20 to 25 minutes ago with the recently leaked 2005 recording of Trump in which he said some very lewd things about women. The moderators, as well as the audience, surely seemed to have a lot of questions for Trump, also for Clinton as well. For more, we turn to our Eun Shin, who's on the line. So, Eun Shin, that was some debate.
Indeed, Mark. So one notable thing about tonight's event is that it's the only presidential debate to have a group of audience members, and most of them undecided voters, asking questions, in addition to the moderators who also focused on asking follow-up questions. But as you noted, the big question on everyone's mind was Trump's response to the leaked video showing a conversation between him and NBC's Billy Bush, who has just been suspended from the Today Show, by the way, for the remarks he made on the tape. Trump apologized for the words he said on the tape and said he didn't actually do any of the things he talked about. He said that it was nothing more than a locker room talk between guys and, quote, one of those things. And then he quickly pivoted to the sexual allegations against former President Bill Clinton from nearly 2 decades ago and talked about ISIS. Clinton criticized Trump's language and behavior, especially towards women, and questioned his fitness for the office of president.
So, Eun Shin, aside from the controversial video of Trump, what were some of the other topics that were brought up at the debate, and what was the atmosphere like in the room?
Well, what we saw tonight in many ways was a repeat of what we saw 2 weeks ago. Some of the topics were brought up by the audience members, including national security and the practicality of continuing Obamacare. But at this point, it really came down to how the candidates carried themselves. Trump brought up Clinton's email scandal and said that he would appoint a special prosecutor to investigate her, saying that she would be in jail if he were president. Clinton, however, stood her ground and admitted that it was a mistake, but said the justice system has done its job regarding the matter. We have one last presidential debate left before the election, scheduled for Wednesday, October 19th in Las Vegas, when the people of the United States will have one more chance to hear from the candidates. That is, if they still haven't made up their minds. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Eun Shin. We'll have to see how or if that debate will affect the poll numbers in the coming days. Now, in other news, South Korea's ruling Saenuri Party and top government officials have been working on plans to help people affected by last week's typhoon that struck southern parts of the country. Ji Myung-gil has the details.
The ruling Saenuri Party and the government held talks on Monday aimed at quickly providing necessary aid to typhoon-stricken areas in the south of the country. The government says it's planning to support up to 70% of all damages incurred on individual properties caused by the deadly typhoons. They will also allow citizens to have vehicles damaged by floods fixed free of charge and give them other benefits such as lowering water and gas utility bills. Schools in typhoon-hit areas will be provided with additional funds. The ruling party also urged the government to designate the typhoon-stricken regions as special disaster zones to speed up restoration efforts. Some 10,000 volunteers, soldiers, and government officials are lending a helping hand to speed up the recovery process and normalize the cities of Ulsan, Gyeongju, Busan, and Jeju. The ruling party and the government have vowed to formulate comprehensive countermeasures to extend financial aid to typhoon victims. Last week, Typhoon Chaba struck southern parts of Korea, leaving at least 7 people dead. Aside from the human losses, the heavy rain affected thousands of hectares of farmland and inundated more than 500 houses, along with thousands of automobiles. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, while Korea's railway workers continue to stage a nationwide strike for the second straight week, the nation's cargo workers have also joined the club. The Korean Cargo Workers Union started its general strike this morning, and it's already affecting logistics in some major ports down south. According to the Yeosu Gwangyang Port Authority in Jeollanam-do Province, some 1,000 workers are taking part in the strike, leaving about 2,000 cargo vehicles at a standstill. Officials say the strike is estimated to disturb about 42% of the total container movements at that port. The union says it's walking off the job to protest a number of government policies, including its decision to abolish regulations on controlling freight supply and demand. They say that without the regulations, the number of freight trucks will increase, lowering freight charges and affecting small and mid-sized operators. Foreign investors are continuing to snap up Korean shares in a buying spree that's lasted for 4 straight months. Overseas investors bought 1.6 trillion won worth of Korean shares, or $1.4 billion in September. Korea's Financial Supervisory Service says that as of the end of last month, foreign investors owned over $420 billion worth of listed shares. That's close to the record high of over $423 billion. That was set in April of last year. Foreign investment accounted for 30.5% of the aggregate value of listed stock, logging the same amount as in August. The Vice Chairman of the US Federal Reserve has pointed to the central bank remaining on track for a rate hike before the year ends, citing solid economic figures. Speaking at the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank in Washington on Sunday, Stanley Fischer said steady progress on jobs, continued growth and faith that inflation will rise towards the Fed's 2% target has set the stage for policymakers to raise rates in December. However, Fischer said the economic outlook is inherently uncertain and that the Fed's assessment of the appropriate path could shift in response to changes to the outlook and its associated risks. US interest rates are currently between 0.25 and 0.5%. Haiti has announced 3 days of national mourning for the nearly 900 people killed in the wake of Hurricane Matthew. The Category 4 storm displaced over 60,000 people and destroyed, as you can see there, hundreds upon hundreds of homes and swept away crops. The United States, France and international organizations are sending emergency aid to meet the immediate effects of those affected. In the US, Hurricane Matthew has claimed the lives of 16 people, nearly half in North Carolina, flooding cities and knocking out power in millions of homes and businesses. Now, the hurricane was the most powerful Atlantic storm to hit the region since 2007. Weather experts downgraded it to a post-tropical cyclone early on Sunday local time. Staying with international news, a car bomb attack has left 18 people dead in Turkey's southeastern town of Semdalin. Although no group has claimed responsibility for the attack, which took place on Sunday, Turkish officials say the Kurdistan Workers' Party, also known as the PKK, was likely behind the incident that killed 10 soldiers and 8 civilians. The PKK launched its first attack against the Turkish government in 1984 with the goal of eventually forming a separate Kurdish state. It also waged war in neighbouring Syria, strengthening the separatist movement back at home. A brief ceasefire between the PKK and Turkey was reached in 2013, but it dissolved last year. The ongoing conflict has left more than 40,000 people dead thus far. Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled bulletin is coming up at 2 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.